sovereign motherland. Our flag shall be a symbol that truth and justice reign. In peace or battle honored, and this we count as gain. To hang on to our children a banner without stain. O God of all creation, grant this our one request. Help us to build a nation where no man is oppressed. And so with peace and plenty, Nigeria may be blessed.
Lead City University, the cradle of great leaders, where hopes and dreams are given life and drive for great attainment. With motivation and inspiration, with dedicated educators standing peace and love from different cultures, beautiful picture. Lead City University. We are the leaders, the light of our great nation. Diversified yet one great vision, with knowledge for self-reliance and wisdom to serve our fatherland. We're dedicated, educated, standing peace and love. Our voices together, beautiful harmony. Lead City University. Lead City University. Lead City University.
Thank you all very much. You may be seated. Thank you. Thank you very much. Once again, I welcome you. Once again, I welcome you to Lead City University, Ibadan, and to the 19th inaugural lecture with the theme, A Woman's Right to be Human, a paradigm shift of the nation of equality and non-discrimination. And to begin our program, I'd like to recognize the members of the high table. I want to start by recognizing and welcoming to the program the Vice Chancellor of Lead City University, Professor Kabiru Adeyemo. Thank you, sir. The next person to be recognized is the Registrar of Lead City University, and that is Dr. Oyebola Ayeni. Thank you, ma. Welcome to the program. The Bursar of Lead City University, Dr. Kumbi Taiwo. We also recognize our university librarian, Dr. Olanrewaju Oshani. And of course, the last but not the least on our high table there is our inaugural lecturer for today, and that is Professor Foluke Oluyemisi Abimbola. She's the reason why we are all here. Thank you very much. Thank you. And so to get right into our program, I'd like to invite the Vice Chancellor to give his opening remarks. Vice Chancellor, sir, you have our attention. Can we applaud him as he comes to the podium? Thank you.
Thank you. The Registrar, Dr. Mrs. Bola Ayeni. The Bursar of the University, Dr. Mrs. Taiwo Olakunbi. The University Librarian, Dr. Lanre Oshani. Deputy Vice Chancellors, inaugural lecturer of today, Dr. Mrs. Foluke Oluyemisi Abimbola. Please let us appreciate her, please. Learned colleagues, the learned sick present, please let us appreciate them. Let's appreciate them. The Provost College of Medicine, the Provost Postgraduate College, Deans of Faculties, members of the Senate, head of departments, professors from other sister universities, families and friends of Professor Mrs. Abimbola, staff and students of Lee City University, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Lee City University community, I welcome you all to our university. It is with great honor and profound pride that we celebrate and recognize Professor Foluke Oluyemisi Abimbola as she delivers the 19th inaugural lecture of the university. The title of our lecture is A Woman's Right to be Human, a paradigm shift of the notion of equality and non-discrimination. Professor Mrs. Foluke, please, remain standing, please. Professor Mrs. Foluke Oluyemisi Abimbola Nidesalu is a professor of law, an esteemed legal scholar, outstanding teacher, advocate for justice, and a distinguished leader at Lee City University, Ibadan. Professor Abimbola's illustrious journey began in the University of Ibadan community, where a highly passion for reading and writing flourished. Her academic foundation was laid at Staff School, University of Ibadan, and International School, where she displayed her brilliance from 1972 to 1978. Even at a younger age, Professor Abimbola demonstrated exceptional talent in reading and writing, which fueled her passion for storytelling and essay writing. At the tender age of 7, she began contributing articles to the Staff School magazine, marking the beginning of her lifelong love for writing. For her secondary education, Professor Mrs. Abimbola proceeded to the International School, University of Ibadan. After successfully completing her West African Examination Council, she spent an additional year in SIS studies, A-levels. However, she enrolled only for the lower 6 before moving to tertiary education. In 1984, she gained admission to the Premier University of Ibadan to study philosophy in the Faculty of Arts. And during her time as a philosophy student, Professor Mrs. Abimbola pursued elective courses in the Department of English, where she excelled, particularly in the creative writing courses. Despite not only being a major, her performance in this subject was unparalleled, as she earned the highest grades. And her talent was further validated when she won an essay writing competition organized by the University of Ibadan. I think she deserves a round of applause. Driven by childhood ambition to become a lawyer, Professor Abimbola transferred to the Faculty of Law at the University of Ibadan after 2 years of studying philosophy. Although her first love was English literature, she believed that her transition to law was divinely orchestrated. In 1992, she graduated from the University of Ibadan with a Bachelor of Law LL.B. honors and proceeded to the Nigerian Law School, where she was called to the Nigerian Bar in December 1993. Professor Abimbola further obtained a master's degree, LL.M, in law from the University of Ibadan, and later earned a PhD in law from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, Durban, South Africa. Her area of specialization include international human rights law, international environmental law, and comparative family law. Professor Abimbola is a woman of extraordinary intellect and education. Professor Abimbola's academic and professional journey spanned decades of teaching, research, and advocacy. She joined Lee City University in 2005, and since that time, she has made indelible contribution to the Faculty of Law through her expertise in courses like law of contracts, torts, commercial transaction, evidence, and environmental law. Her leadership as the first dean of the Faculty of Law has been marked by innovation, excellence, and vision. Under her stewardship, the faculty hosted its first international law conference and strengthened the clinical legal education program, among other achievements. Her teaching career began during the National Youth Service Corps, NYC, in 1994, where she taught business law to ICANN students at the Professional Study Group. She later lectured briefly at the Ogun State University Satellite Campus in Ibadan before the satellite programs were discontinued. In addition to her academic career, Professor Abimbola's professional legacy and legal journey began in 1994 when she served as a pupil state counsel in the Oyo State Ministry of Justice, where she was actively involved in criminal prosecution and judicial review cases. From 1995 to 1997, she acquires her legal skills at the prestigious law firm of Chief J.O.K. Ajayi, San & Co. In 1997, she co-founded the law firm Prime Solicitor, where she remains a partner. Her practice focuses on environmental law, family law, human rights, and corporate and commercial practice. Currently, Professor Mrs. Abimbola serves as the Dean of Faculty of Law, and she holds the distinction of being the first female Dean of the faculty since inception, and recently delivered the faculty first inaugural lecture. Within Leeds City University, Professor Abimbola has served in numerous capacities, including Sub-Dean Faculty of Law 2019 to 2020, Staff Advisor, Law Student Association 2019, Postgraduate Coordinator, Faculty of Law 2019, and Sub-Dean Faculty of Law 2006 to 2011. She is also a member of critical university committees, such as Ethics Committee, Research Committee, Institutional Review Board. Outside the university, Professor Abimbola served as reviewer for the Dignity Journal, University of Rhode Island, the United States of America, member editorial board of the British Journal of Law, Broad Publishers UK, and reviewer, African Journal of Gender, Society and Development, Adonis and Abbey Publisher in UK. Our significant achievement as the Dean include organizing the first International Law Conferences, that was June 2022, facilitating the training of 65 students and staff as associate members of the Institute of Certified Mediators and Conciliators, introducing new courses in privacy and data protection law taught by experts and guest lecturers, enhancing the clinical legal education curriculum by introducing report writing and logbook documentation for court and chambers attachment. Beyond the classroom, Professor Mrs. Abimbola is a formidable advocate for human rights. As a prominent member and past chairperson of the International Federation of Women Lawyers, FIDA, Oyo State Branch, she has championed the rights of women and children, addressing issues such as torture, discrimination, and harmful practices, where she has held several leadership roles: Assistant General Secretary 2001 to 2003, General Secretary 2003 to 2005, and Chairperson 2008 to 2010. Under her leadership, she edited the maiden publication of FIDA, Oyo State Journal, in October 2010. Through FIDA, she has provided legal representation for women and children in case of torture, forced marriages, discrimination, rape, harmful widowhood practice, and HIV stigmatization. She has also organized advocacy visits to various communities to promote awareness of fundamental human rights. Professor Mrs. Abimbola is an accredited mediator of the Lagos Multi-Door Courthouse and the Oyo State Multi-Door Courthouse, where she served as a neutral panelist. Her work as an accredited mediator further underscores her commitment to justice and reconciliation. She is also a notary public of the Supreme Court of Nigeria, an active member of several professional bodies, including Nigerian Bar Association, Ibadan Branch. She chaired the Law Week Committee 2018, and also chaired the Continuing Legal Education Committee 2020 to 2024. I think she deserves a round of applause. She's also an international, is a member of International Bar Association and the Nigerian Association of Law Teachers. Professor Abimbola's scholar contributions are prolific. She has published extensively in peer-reviewed accredited journals, contributed to books, and reviewed academic works globally. Her involvement with prestigious editorial board and international conference has positioned her as a renowned authority in international human rights law and environmental justice. In recognition of her dedication, Professor Abimbola, Mrs. Abimbola has received numerous awards for excellence in teaching, legal advocacy, and contribution to society. She received the Most Hardworking Lecturer Award in the university in 2006, awarded by the Law Students Association, Award of Excellence 2011, and Women of Excellence in Industry, organized by ADR Society 2017. Beyond academics, Professor Ms. Abimbola remains deeply involved in community service. She's a board member of Mother and Guide Child Protection Initiative, Ibadan Home for Motherless Babies, and Alliance Franchise Ibadan. She also served in leadership role at Sonta International Club Ibadan, an organization dedicated to empowering women and children. Professor Abimbola is a committed member of Rema Chapel International Churches, where she coordinates programs for ministers' wives and female ministers. She is also the convener of Ladies Hangout, an outreach program for female undergraduates. Professor Ms. Abimbola is a mentor, a role model, and a leader of immense intellect. She is a paragon of scholarly excellence, social impact, and service to humanity. As she delivers this inaugural lecture, we honor her remarkable achievement, commitment to justice, and invaluable contribution to the Faculty of Law, Leeds City University. Professor Foluke Oluyemisi Abimbola is happily married to Mr. Oluseun Abimbola's son, and the marriage is blessed with 3 children. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure and singular honor to present to you Professor Oluyemisi Abimbola, an academic luminary, a prolific writer, exemplary leader, team player, and a trailblazer in the legal profession, to the podium to deliver the 19th inaugural lecture of Leeds City University. You are welcome.
Thank you so much, everyone. I welcome everyone to this August event in the month of December. The Vice Chancellor, the Registrar, the Bursar, the University Librarian, the Deputy Vice Chancellors, the Deputy Registrars, the Provost, Postgraduate College, the Provost, College of Medicine, Deputy Provost, College of Medicine, Deans of faculties in Leeds City University and other universities here present, professors of other universities and also in Leeds City University, Senate members, heads of departments, senior advocates of Nigeria, learned colleagues, judges, honorable judges of the High Courts, Court of Appeal and Supreme Court, retired and not tired, and also serving, students, my students past and present, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I give all the praise and glory to God for this great privilege, honor, and opportunity to deliver the 19th inaugural lecture in this great citadel of learning. This is also my 19th year as a staff of Leeds City University, and it's the 19th inaugural lecture. Thank you so much. This inaugural lecture is also the first on behalf of the Faculty of Law, Leeds City University, presented by my humble self, the first female Dean of the Faculty of Law. This lecture captures my research interest for over 30 years of my legal career. I was called to the Nigerian Bar on the 15th of December, 1993, and I've been in active legal practice and in the academia ever since. The lecture encapsulates my research into women's rights as human rights, which is an area I have been involved in as a legal practitioner and an academician. This lecture will further expose us to major violations of women's rights, occasioned by man-made stereotypes, which is long overdue for a paradigm shift. The constant violation of laws and policies denouncing discrimination and violations of women's rights grossly undermines a woman who is as much a human being as a man. The continuous subjugation of her rights, despite her undeniable contributions to the progress and development of society, the economy, and general well-being of all, may lead to unsustainable outcomes. Therefore, there is a much-needed change as this notion of equality and non-discrimination continues to be at the front burner of human rights. Equality and non-discrimination can become a reality as the true existence of the woman is not to be inferior to a man. Hence, my emphasis in this paper is on equality and non-discrimination of the female gender. The topic of this lecture brings to mind a desire in my heart to see a cultural change or a paradigm shift, which is a fundamental change in approach in the way women and girls are treated in every sphere and strata of society. No doubt, women and men are different. However, the substantive equality approach recognizes that men have rights, and women have rights also, which must be respected and protected. In this lecture, I recommend a paradigm shift from the usual order of denying women of their human rights and subjugating them to a position of slavery and servitude. This paper will also make recommendations on how this can be achieved in order to ensure equality of sexes and non-discrimination against women. Negative gender stereotypes fail to recognize the important contributions made by women in positions of authority and national development. I hope to achieve through this lecture an analysis of authority and national development. I hope to achieve through this lecture an analysis of the legislative, cultural, and constitutional factors that can help to succeed in increasing gender diversity in positions of authority and in government particularly. I conclude by offering a normative solution that can pave the way to achieving gender equality in Nigeria. Adopting the intention of international human rights instruments, I propose an equality model requiring positive action to facilitate laws enabling gender equality. This solution may have broad cultural impact and enable a paradigm shift in stereotypes against women, which will help change the lived experiences and outcomes for women in Nigeria for generations to come. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, my interest in human rights law, particularly women's rights, was born when I became a member of the International Federation of Women Lawyers, FIDA, Oyo State, in 1999. I was encouraged to be part of FIDA Oyo State branch by Mrs. Fumi Roberts, CIAB, who is one of my mentors. She exposed me to the woes and the plight of women when she started the FIDA Legal Aid and Counseling Center, and also encouraged me to research, write, and present papers. Opportunities to present such papers opened when United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, now known as United Nations Children's Fund, invited FIDA Oyo State for some of their workshops in collaboration with the Ministry of Women Affairs, Oyo State. I can say, perhaps unknown to her, that she was the lighter that God used to set ablaze my interest in human rights and women's rights. In addition, my PhD thesis, titled Development of Policy Guidelines for the Protection of the Socioeconomic Rights of Women Affected by the Exploration of Extractives in Africa, Nigeria and South Africa as case studies, is a research that further enlightened me about the disregard of policies on the rights of women. I was able to combine my research with environmental law, which area of the law I also became very interested in through the encouragement of Professor Yinka Omorodbe, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, who supervised my LL.M thesis titled Corporate Social Responsibility and Environmental Justice in Nigeria. My research in this area was not wasted with respect to women's rights, as it narrowed my interest to the women living in the extractive industry environments, such as the Niger Delta area in Nigeria. My comparative study with women living in the mining areas in South Africa and the women in the Niger Delta further revealed the utter disregard for the rights of women living in oil-rich and mining communities. Similar violations of women's rights occurred in both Nigeria and South Africa due to acts of discrimination against women as a vulnerable group in these communities. Some fundamental issues of concern with regard to women's rights centered mainly on the realization that their rights were not seen as paramount due to the patriarchal nature of our societies. My interest in women's rights also led me to investigate causes of domestic violence and against women and the girl child, harmful widowhood rights, female genital mutilation, violation of women's reproductive rights, marriage and divorce, child marriages, women and child trafficking, on which I have researched and published papers extensively in these areas and presented papers on these issues at different conferences locally and internationally. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, I would want to say at this point that the issue of women's rights is a controversy that is still a major concern with respect to human rights. A woman is a human being just as a man is a human being. Just as a man is also a human being. This is reflected in some verses in the Holy Bible governing Christianity as a religion, and thus revealing a message of equality. There is neither Greek, nor Jew, nor slave, nor free, nor man, nor woman, but we are all one in Christ. That's in Galatians chapter 3, verse 28. The Quran speaks to justice, the sanctity of life, freedom, mercy, compassion, and respect for all human beings. Please see Surah An-Nisa 135. Although these texts generally do not speak of rights, they, however, address moral duties and responsibilities towards others. At the same time, the rationale underlying these duties, equality, human dignity, and the sacredness of life, provide a foundation for the concept of human rights. Human rights are based on principles of dignity, equality, and mutual respect, which are shared across cultures, religions, and philosophies. Respect for human rights is the cornerstone of strong communities in which everyone can make a contribution and feel included. Accordingly, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR 1948, put in place the principles of non-discrimination and equality, representing the twin pillars upon which the whole edifice of human rights law is established. Also, the Beijing Declaration, by its paragraph 9, projects the aim of the Fourth World Conference on Women, which includes to ensure the full implementation of the human rights of women and of the girl child as an inalienable, integral, and indivisible part of all human rights and fundamental freedoms. By its Article 14, the Beijing Declaration declared that women's rights are human rights. This means that women's rights deserve due protection, which is what international movement seeks to do via the Beijing Declaration and other instruments. A brief history of the development of women's rights. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, with your kind permission, I wouldn't be going too much into the history because it's in my paper that has already been delivered because of my time. But I just want to say one thing, that at the end of slavery, a lot of women came out with a lot of policies, and different groups of women came out to say how they must be treated well just because slavery had ended. And they also brought out different things that occurred even at that time. As far as 1933, there was a 1933 Convention on the Nationality of Women, was the first to provide binding guarantees. That's when women started voting in Finland and Australia, Finland and Australia in 1906, and Norway in 1913. So we can see that the women's rights issues have been there for decades and centuries. In addition to the treaties, the conferences adopted resolutions on the rights of women. The first in 1923, and the 1928 conference recommended states adopt legislation on maternity leave and non-discrimination in employment. The UDHR was explicitly adopted to reflect and elaborate on the customary international law speculated in the fundamental freedoms and human rights referenced in the United Nations Charter, which is binding on all member states. Hence, the UDHR is a milestone document in the history of human rights. Consequently, the UN, through many of its agencies and development agenda, have made women's rights and its intersection with the gender question a major pillar of development agenda, from the recently completed Millennium Development Goals to ongoing United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. For instance, Goal 5 of the Sustainable Development Goals aimed at achieving gender equality and empower all women and girls. Although all UN member states supported the equal rights for women and men in principle and confirmed this numerous times, men in power do not often walk the talk. Instead, they use different techniques to maintain their privileges. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, is often acclaimed to be the most comprehensive treaty addressing the rights and status of women. However, this convention is yet to be enacted as a domestic law in Nigeria. Even though Nigeria signed the convention on the 23rd of April 1984 and ratified it on the 13th of June 1985 without reservations. In my research so far, sir, I have found that there are certain aspects of CEDAW found in some of our domestic legislation, even though CEDAW has not been domesticated as a law in Nigeria. These include laws passed by the federal government and various states in Nigeria, which have incorporated some of these provisions to some extent, which constitute the foundation for defending women and children against discriminatory practices in Nigeria's indigenous systems. Some of the laws include the Nigerian Child Rights Act 2003, which denounces child marriage in section 21, while section 16(2) of CEDAW also declares that state parties shall ensure that the betrothal and marriage of a child shall have no legal effect. So we can see that some of these provisions, I can't go into all the laws, but there are many laws that have been enacted in Nigeria today that reflect some of the provisions of CEDAW. Also we'll go back to CEDAW, Article 7, as quoted below, says state parties shall take all appropriate measures to eliminate discrimination against women in the political and public life of the country, and in particular shall ensure women on equal terms with men and the right to vote in all elections and public referenda, and to be eligible for election to all publicly elected bodies, to participate in the formulation of government policy and the implementation thereof, and to hold public office and perform all public functions at all levels of government. Also to participate in non-governmental organizations and associations concerned with the public and political life of the country. Implementation of some of the above requirements may be difficult due to the requirement of section 12(1) of the 1999 Nigerian Constitution, which provides no treaty between the Federation and any other country shall have the force of law, except to the extent to which any such treaty has been enacted into law by the National Assembly. Nevertheless, the Nigerian government has enacted the African Charter on Human and People's Rights as a domestic legislation and is cited as African Charter on Human and People's Rights, Ratification and Enforcement Act, Chapter A9, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria, 2004. Therefore, the provisions of the African Charter can be adopted for the protection of women's rights and canvassed in the domestic courts if these rights are violated. Particularly, Section 18 of the African Charter states that the state shall ensure the elimination of every discrimination against women and also ensure the protection of the rights of the woman and the child as stipulated in international declarations and conventions. So impliedly, we have brought in CEDAW through the African Charter because Article 18 says we should recognize international treaties and conventions that protect women's rights. The enforcement of the provisions of the African Charter has been emphasized by the Supreme Court of Nigeria in the case of Abacha versus Gani Fawemi, that the individual rights contained in the articles of the African Charter are justiciable in Nigerian courts. Therefore, the articles of the Charter show that individuals are assured rights which they can seek to protect from being violated, and if violated, to seek appropriate remedies, and it is in the national courts such protection and remedies can be sought, and if the case is established, enforced. Although these treaties and conventions have been canvassed over the years, the former United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Navanethem Pillay, declared that to implement the letter and the spirit of international human rights law, no effort should be spared to persuade countries to live up to their international obligations, which enjoin them to repeal laws and stamp out discriminatory customs, harmful practices, and prejudices that negate or undermine the achievement of equality between women and men. However, as much as the African Charter appeared to consider more rights than other conventions, the omission in the African Charter of not addressing rights peculiar to women, such as reproductive rights, gave birth to the protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the rights of women in Africa. This is implied in the preamble to the protocol, which says thus, that despite the ratification of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights and other international human rights instruments by the majority of state parties, and their solemn commitment to eliminate all forms of discrimination and harmful practices against women, women in Africa still continue to be victims of discrimination and harmful practices. Harmful practices have been defined in the protocol as all behavior, attitudes, and practices which negatively affect the fundamental rights of women and girls, such as their right to life, health, dignity, education, and physical integrity. The protocol is very explicit about implementation, and it states that governments are urged to employ affirmative action strategies to ensure that women have the right to participate in politics and governance. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, unfortunately, according to the United Nations Women's World Report 2020, no country has achieved gender equality. It further states that progress towards equal power and equal rights for women remain elusive. This is more pronounced in the rural communities of developing countries. Manisuli Senjonjo declared that in his book, Culture and the Human Rights of Women in Africa, that this has denied society of the many benefits that can be derived from an empowered woman. Research has in fact indicated that when more income is put into the hands of women, there's an improvement in areas of child nutrition, health, and education. Women are often subjected to discriminatory employment practices, such as the requirement to present a non-pregnancy certificate to gain employment or to avoid dismissal from employment. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, I want to say at this point that I had a client who got a job in the bank but was asked to go and do a pregnancy test to ensure that she was not pregnant. But meanwhile, she was newly married and she actually wanted to be pregnant. So that's one of the things that goes on. It's real. Therefore, notwithstanding comprehensive international and domestic laws proscribing gender discrimination and promoting equality, women's human rights remain systematically denied, and women are poorer than men across class, race, national, economic, and ethnic lines. Now, Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, I want to discuss sources of inequality and discrimination. And the first one is patriarchy. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, patriarchy is an anthropological term denoting families or societies ruled by fathers. It sets up a hierarchy, a rule of priests, in which the priest, the heros, is the father pattern. The patriarchal society sets the parameters for women's structurally unequal position in families and markets. It condones gender differential terms in inheritance rights and legal adulthood by tacitly accepting domestic and sexual violence and sanctioning differential wages for equal or comparable work. Tradition or culture and religion have dictated men and women relationships for centuries and entrenched male domination into the structure of social organization and institution at all levels. The term has been defined as a system of male authority which oppresses women through its social, political, and economic institutions. It is a system of social stratification and differentiation on the basis of sex, which provides material advantages to males, while simultaneously placing severe constraints on the roles and activities of females. Indeed, our patriarchal structure is perhaps the proximate cause of the unconscious bias society has against women with respect to their rights and freedom from discrimination. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, in patriarchal societies, women do not enjoy equal status as men in any sphere of their lives. Therefore, any system that operates an order that accords men undue advantage over women is considered patriarchal. For instance, sometime in the year 2010, it was reported that the Nigerian consulate in Johannesburg, South Africa, denied a Nigerian woman her request to apply for passports for her children in the absence of a letter from the children's father, and offered to only issue the documents as soon as the paternal endorsements were received. The reason for this denial was explained to her by an immigration officer at the consulate that in Nigeria, the children belong to the man. To confirm this position, immigration officials at the Lagos Passport Office, Ikoyi, confirmed that the father's consent is indeed a prerequisite while applying for the passports of minors. According to another immigration official, this is done to prevent situations where the mother of a child might want to take particularly during divorce proceedings. Another senior official at the office of the Nigerian Immigration Service has alleged for security reasons. It is intended to check crimes such as human trafficking and child labor. When asked if the mother's consent is required when a father is the one applying for their passport, the immigration official said, this may not be necessary since Nigeria is a patrilineal upholding gender equality in Nigerian politics is affirmative action. Discovered that patriarchy has resulted in continuous discrimination of women and with disastrous effect as wide socioeconomic inequality